What are your tips on how to ace a job interview?
I'll tell you common mistakes that I hear or see. First of all, the craziest thing I've seen is a guy showed up for an interview drunk. Crazy.
What?
That was wild. Reeked of beer apparently, and just was babbling all over the place. So that definitely don't do. Peace of mind is priceless, which means that should also be a high thing on your priority list. Actually enjoying coming to work.
What are some things that employers get wrong when evaluating potential employees?
Sometimes they focus too much on what the person has done and not what they could do. This is a once-in-a-lifetime personality fit. Like, this person thinks the same way you think. Like, has the same drive that you require. Like, you were that person. You wouldn't take a chance on yourself.
How do you deal with the pressure of being responsible for finding people jobs and employees?
I only worry about things that I can control.
Parallels between basketball and business.
The grind. I don't have hours. There are days that I work till 2 a.m. I owe YouTube so much tuition.
Facts.
I owe them all my tuition.
Is college a scam?
Okay. So you've already heard a little bit of my take on it.
Introduce your brand and business, man. Tell us about
Sure.
SM Staffing.
Yeah, so SM Staffing is a recruiting agency. I started it about 3 years ago. It was mostly meant to be originally I didn't have a focus. It was like, I'll be niche down, whatever. But in the beginning, I just tried to learn a lot. Now our main focus is culture matching people up personality-wise in addition to on paper. Results of that, people find are significantly higher retention rates, which is a huge issue that companies have when it comes to candidates and employees, especially nowadays. Young people in general are more likely to bounce around. They go into jobs saying, I'm just here for a resume builder for a year or two. So having that personality fit is huge for the company's perspective and retaining. So that's more what we focus on. We service across the U.S., all companies, industries, everything. We have 8 recruiters that each specialize in different industries, so we can pretty much service anybody. That's pretty much my company in a nutshell, more or less.
Got it, yeah. So what exactly is culture matching?
Yeah, good question. So, for example, if you probably have applied for a job before, you've seen a job description, you've seen tasks, qualifications, experience required, that type of thing. But there's a whole other aspect to that they don't really put in a job description, and that's the culture side of things. That's getting along with the people in your office. That's having like-minded goals and what people kind of connect to when it comes to mission statements and what speaks to them. Meaning, you could have some people that come in and they're clock in, clock out type of people, where they're okay, 9 to 5, this is all I do, this is what I focus on, and then 5 o'clock I'm done. And then you have some people that are super motivated, that they'll even work after hours, or they're more project based, meaning they're great, if I finish my work by 3, then I'm good, you know, and they're working on just finishing things quickly. Some offices are more of a social setting. Some are more of less social, more in your cubicle, do your own work, do your own stuff, and call it a day. So matching people up to that plays a big factor in whether or not they're happy there. And when people are happy there, the efficiency goes up, as well as, like I said, retention. People want to continue working in places where they enjoy working. A lot of times when people are thinking about their packages, their compensation package, they think about benefits, they think about salary, they think about PTO, but peace of mind is priceless, which means that should also be a high thing on your priority list, is actually enjoying coming to work. Even if you're only doing it for a year or two. I have a buddy of mine who he's okay, I'm just going to work at this place for a year or two and be done, but he hates it. It's a grind every day. It's he wants to leave now. He wants to leave yesterday, but he's forcing himself to do it. That's not a good lifestyle, and the work reflects that. So it's a big factor in the hiring process, and for some reason overlooked by a lot of companies. But the top dogs, they know exactly what they're doing. They focus a lot on culture.
So I'd love it if you could tell the story of when you started this, because
Sure.
I remember you were telling me in the car the other day, and I was really enjoying hearing the process and kind of all the different factors that went into why you started it and how it played out. So talk about that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. So I was in college. I was in YU. I was there for a year. And then while I was there, I wasn't really vibing with the college environment experience. Obviously, the social life was great, but the classes, the clocking in, clocking out to classes that probably had no relevance to what I was going to do in the future. So I joined this job WhatsApp group chat where they would just post jobs all the time, just because I was curious. I've always been the type of guy that always picked up like side hustles all over the place. I did like making YouTube videos, like unboxing and review videos for an ID card printing company called Bodno, which I did for a while.
Nice.
So I did a little bit of that. I did drop shipping. I partnered up with a bakery and laundry dry cleaning service. I did like runs for them. Like I did a ton of side hustles because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
So you're always like just trying shit.
Yeah, I was always trying things, which is what I tell people to do anyways when it comes to figuring out what they want to do. Because I wasn't one of those guys who went into college knowing what I wanted. Some people like have the like benefit of just knowing.
Yeah, and
like,
some people delude themselves into thinking they
yeah,
know.
Exactly. But like some people are like, I want to be a coder. I want to work for Amazon as a software developer, and that's what I want to do, and that's their dream. And they go on their path, and they just know.
I don't know how people are able to, because for me, it's like just endless possibilities.
Yeah,
but it's endless like uncertainty.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right. So part of my mindset is there's millions of jobs that exist, and I don't even know half of them. Like at that point in my life, I knew accounting, tech, sales, and like marketing. Like that's what I knew. And I didn't know what other jobs were out there. So I joined this job chat so I could just see what opportunities exist and then kind of ask about them and inquire about them and see like what that means, what it looks like, what people do. So while I was doing that, I saw a job called being an SEO expert, search engine optimization. So that was kind of interesting to me. I didn't know what it was. I never heard about it, so I asked the guy who posted it what it was. He told me a little bit about it, and I was fascinated. What it pretty much is whenever you search the thing on Google, who decides what website comes up first?
Oh,
right?
Interesting. Okay.
Obviously, you have like the ones that say ad on top, right, which are paid for. People can pay for their website to be kind of shown first. But most of the times you'll see that and you'll scroll right by and be like, oh, this is an ad. It's not what I want. I move forward. But who decides that Amazon comes up first when you search up, nearest, or not nearest, but when you search up buying a gift for a friend, Amazon comes up first. Who decides Amazon's first, right? So SEO experts pretty much understand Google's process of.
Would you be designing an algorithm, or are you kind of like going through different possible searches?
It's a mix of like coding a little bit, but also just understanding Google's guidelines. Like their number one priority is showing you the most relevant thing that's easy to read and easy to understand to the user. So parts that go into it are site speed, whether or not it's easy to scroll through. There's something called bounce rate, which is how quickly people jump off your site, meaning somebody clicks on your link and they quickly decide this is not what I want. Then Google picks up on that and says, oh, this is probably not what people are looking for when they search this thing up. So they rank it lower. There's a lot of keywords that are involved, meaning when you search up certain things, if there's a lot of one word on the page and you search up that word, Google will pull that up more. So SEO experts pretty much mess with the website, the copy, the back end to make your website ranked higher. And the difference between being ranked 2 versus 7 is millions of dollars potentially. Like there's a phrase that they talk about in the SEO world, like you can hide a dead body on the second page of Google and no one would find it. You know what I'm saying?
That's a fact.
Yeah, no one ever goes to
I
the
don't
second
think
page of Google.
I haven't done that in years, dude.
Yeah, no one ever goes. So like if you're on the second page of Google, you're screwed. Like there's no way anyone's ever going to find your site. So I got super into that. I took a bunch of courses online, learned as much as I could about it, but I didn't really have a coding background, so I was kind of like limited. So I reached back out to the guy who originally posted it, who happened to be a recruiter, and I just wanted to know if I needed that experience as well. Through our conversations, I was kind of confused because like, wait a minute, you work for the company or you're just like some guy? Like, why are you deciding whether or not I get to have an interview or not? Like, what's your role here? So he told me about what a recruiter is, what an agency recruiter is. I was super interested by that. So I said, hey, I'm in college. I have all these group chats. At that time, I switched to FDU, Fairleigh Dickinson University.
Of course, yeah.
And I was like, hey, what if I just made these group chats, these job boards of college students across the U.S., of all my friends in different colleges, and you can post your jobs, and if somebody gets hired from one of them, I'll take a commission. So he's like, great. Nothing can't hurt him, right? It can only help him. So I started doing that. And then I think I mentioned this to you before. I don't know what it's called. It's like a psychological term. I don't know what it is, but essentially the concept is once you start to
maybe I can get this.
Yeah.
You know, my intro psych. Yeah.
Right, you took psych, right? So
let's see if I can get this right.
Right. So the concept is once you start to think about something, you start to like see it everywhere. So like
so I actually have I've heard this concept, which is like I think it's red car theory.
Is it called red car theory?
I don't know if that's like the proper term for it, but I'm pretty sure the idea is like basically when you see something once or when you like, think of something you start to you start to see something.
Exactly. Like if you're about to purchase a red car, you'll start to just see them all over the place.
Yeah. As soon as you start learning about like a red car, everything starts to look like a red. You start to see red cars.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty much what happened to me. Where I was like, now I'm involved a little bit in the hiring space. So I start seeing like hiring signs or looking for work signs everywhere. So I started, like I said to this recruiter, this mentor of mine, who's still a mentor of mine, like today, what if I brought you companies that are looking to hire and then you placed there also? Would I get a commission there too? And he's like, yeah, of course, no worries. But he was a big player at the time. So he was only really going for the big fish. He was going for the high salaried positions, top level candidates, executive candidates. He wasn't really handling like the secretarial roles, the low management, that type of thing. So I'm the type of guy that like, I don't like seeing opportunity just like slip, and I like to just do things myself. And I wanted to see if I had a future doing this. Like, was it possible for me to do this long term? So I asked him like, hey, what if I just did one on my own just to see if I could do it? And I did it with some manager role. I barely charged the guy a thing. It was super low.
Wait, what exactly were you doing? Sorry, I kind of you wanted to do what exactly?
Yeah, I wanted to start like try the recruiting process.
Oh, okay, guys.
So like hire, like look what a contract looks like. Send them a contract. Get it
basically
signed.
Go through the entire process.
Interview them, vet them, present candidates, source candidates, like get them hired, go through the salary negotiation, the works. I just want to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
So I did, and I ended up placing the guy. And once I saw that I can do it, like conceptually, I was like, great. I feel like I have enough knowledge, since I did it at least once, to kind of go off on my own and just get my hands dirty and do it myself and make the mistakes that entrepreneurs make. And so I asked him for his blessing to go off and do my own thing. He's like, yeah, go ahead. Like I told you, he's still a mentor of mine today. We work together sometimes on different things. And then I started doing business myself. But one thing I was lacking was the network, right? All I had were these group chats. I wasn't on LinkedIn yet. I didn't have any clients. I didn't know where to start. I'm a young guy. I was still in college. It wasn't like I had all these connections to the business world already. So what I did is I leveraged what I had. I had these group chats, and people were looking for work. This was around COVID time, so there were a lot of people getting laid off, and there were a lot of small businesses starting because people were getting laid off. They couldn't find work, so they just started their own businesses, which was great for me because they're not big enough to afford real recruiting fees, but they still were growing enough that they needed a salesperson or a secretary or whatever that is, whatever they needed. So I pretty much sold ad space to these people where, hey, this is super niche advertisement that's for job seekers that are on the network, and you can put your ad on it. People will apply directly. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars in a recruiting fee. You pay $100 for a post. Done. And with that, I was making anywhere between like $800 to $1,200 a week, spending maybe a half hour just like cold messaging people that I saw making postings and then just posting it.
Wait, so sorry, let me ask some stupid questions. So, what exactly were you posting these like opportunities on? Like, were you kind of like running like social media advertisements? Did you have like your own platform? Like,
so I just had the group chats at that time.
Oh, okay.
It was just those like I had like 12 job boards. Now I have like 40, but at the time I had 12 that were meant pretty much for college students. For different colleges across the U.S. We had like one for Rutgers, one for YU, one for NYU, one for Queens College. We had a bunch in like this area, and then we had a few like in Michigan, UCLA, USC, that type of thing. So that was all I had, right?
Yeah.
But that was just getting me by while I started at the same time growing my LinkedIn following, growing my network, going to networking events, talking to other recruiters in the space. So by the time it took, I think about 8-9 months that I started to really get real clients, that kind of tided me over while that was happening. And I was also in college at the time, so I didn't even really need tiding over, but it was good like side cash to start my website, start, marketing myself in other ways. So that's kind of how that started, and then it took off from there.
Got it. What do you think you found? Because I remember when you were telling me this the first time, you said like, I think I liked the recruiting job more than the job that the recruiter had set up.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think it was that you found so fascinating about the recruiting sort of industry? Like, talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Good question. So SEO was really interesting to me, but there was no social aspect to it. And I'm a social guy. I like to talk to people. I like sales. I like meeting people, hearing what they do, helping them, being like the guy that people can go to for help. Like I have also like a referral network where I pretty much created this Google sheet where people pretty much can see what other people in their network do. And whenever they have somebody who needs a certain thing, they can just refer it to somebody and then they can get a referral fee. So like you help me, I help you type of thing. And I just like being that guy that people can kind of come to and say, hey, I need this thing. Can you help me? And especially since all my friends at the time were in college and getting into the job seeking space and starting to get their first jobs, second jobs, I like being a guy that people can come to and be like, hey, I'm looking for a job and I can help them, especially since they're my friends. And being that connector was really cool to me. I also liked being my own boss, which was good. And I also specifically wanted to be in a space where I didn't know anybody was in it. The reason for that was I was thinking about going into real estate. I was thinking about doing sales for different things. And I actually did COVID testing for a little bit during the COVID thing, which was a real like dogfight. A buddy of mine he was the first one to do it. He got hooked up with this lab and he was doing COVID testing in New York. There was I thought there were some legal issues that were going on there, so I didn't stay in there long.
Yeah, why did you choose to do that real quick? I'm just curious.
So I did that while I was also still building up the recruiting thing.
Got it.
So because it wasn't full-fledged yet and it wasn't like my number one thing, I was still kind of building the brand at the time. I was like, hey, let me just pivot while this is a gold rush that's going to happen for like the next XYZ amount of months.
Yeah.
Let me hop on this while it's hot.
Got it.
Then hop right back.
Yeah.
Especially since it wasn't a full thing yet. And there was a lot of money in COVID testing. Like people made insane amounts of money in it, which was why I got nervous because it was too good to be true type of thing. And my grandfather always tells me with business, like if you can't handle the worst possible outcome, don't do it when it comes to business. And there was a lot of gray area of like, is this legal? Is this not legal type of thing?
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
I didn't really get involved. Yeah. But while I was in it for the brief like month that I was involved, it was like a very dog-eat-dog world.
Yeah.
And, like friends were turning on each other because there was such a low barrier of entry and there was so much money that was there to be made that everyone was just like friends turning on friends, people like screwing each other over.
In the COVID testing.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was dirty. Like people were fighting over locations where you can set up shop.
I did not know that whole drama was.
It was real. It was intense. It was intense. Like I had a buddy who found out something was illegal and he didn't tell the other guys who were like his competitors because he wanted the edge. He wanted to scare them off, which to me was wild. Like, hey, these are your boys. Like, you're gonna let them like go to jail potentially?
Yeah,
that was crazy.
That's crazy, man.
So I didn't want to be involved in that type of thing anymore.
Wow.
I felt real estate. Everybody's involved in real estate. Everybody's involved in sales. I didn't want to be like competing with people who I know.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which is half the reason why I got out of the COVID testing space to begin with. I just didn't want to be like tied to kind of like that clash with friends, and combined with the fact that I didn't know if certain things were so legal
especially
or not.
because you mentioned that you're a very like social guy, and why would you want something to get in the way of that?
Exactly.
To avoid it?
Exactly. Like my job is all about relationship building.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
those things are about relationship destruction.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see why the incentive would kind of be misaligned in that business.
Yeah. So I was involved in that for a little bit, and then I quickly was like, this is not for me. But yeah, so that was pretty much that. That's why I decided recruiting was interesting to me. It gave me a lot of freedom. I was able to help people. It wasn't something that anybody else was doing, so I wasn't competing with people who I knew. And I saw a lot of potential in it to like really do good and do well financially, and kind of create something.
Yeah.
And sales, you need a product or you need a service or whatever it is. This was just a service that I was able to offer. And yeah, that's pretty much why I started it.
Yeah, talk about the process of growing it. We kind of got into the whole like, how'd you start it? What were sort of the early steps that you took? But I'm curious to hear about, how are you going from, all right, this thing exists, you're kind of doing it on the side. How does it go from sort of a side hustle during COVID to your whole, now it's your whole career, essentially.
Right. So the way I scaled it, well, recruiting specifically is like a numbers game to an extent, right? The more clients you have, the more candidates you have, the more you have to work with, right? And then there's the whole skill of knowing how to source and where to source and those type of things, which help a lot. What I started doing was, and this was actually interesting, so I'll talk about it for a second. I was actually very, very close to joining another company. Like I just started SM Staffing. I had gone for, like I said, about like 7-8 months, and I started like taking off a little bit, getting my own clients. And another agency in the area, I think they're based in Brooklyn, like they saw me, they saw I had potential, and they're like, hey, we'll give you crazy high commissions, join our, company. They're like, look, you don't have a lot of clients, you're not making a ton of money, having 100% of nothing is still nothing. Come with us, we'll give you like 70-80% commission, you'll be making good, decent money, and you'll learn from us, and you'll do the whole process, and you work for us for a while, and great. And I really thought about it for a while. And ultimately what I decided was that's exactly the position I want to be in. I want to hire other people to work for me to help me out. I don't want to be the guy that's working for them to help them out so they can make money off of me. I want the exact same thing on my end. So I thought to myself, what's going to be the best move for me in 5 years from
now?
That
is the way a recruiter thinks about a great job offer.
Right. Well, I mean, I was thinking about my future. I was thinking, hey, like, what do I want in 5 years? Do I want to be working for this company in 5 years? Or do I want to have my own thing in 5 years? And if I would start working for this company, then once I would leave, I'd have to start from scratch of building my brand.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would learn things, and I'd probably make some money there, but I'd also have to start from scratch in terms of my brand. So I could either start my own brand, continue growing who I am and what I do, and then start hiring my own people, or I could go work for this guy, and then I'm working for him. And especially in commission and sales and that type of thing, and any job anywhere, and I say this and people get rubbed the wrong way when I say this, but if you're working for somebody else, to an extent, you're getting taken advantage of because your output is worth more than what you're getting paid, or else you wouldn't have a job, right? If you cost the company $100,000 a year, let's say, and you were only making them 80, they'd be like, yo, we're losing money on this guy, cut him loose, right? So working for somebody else, my value was more than that. And I knew that, and I recognized that. And I knew if I, especially since I was in college still, and I was starting off and I didn't have a ton of expenses, I could take the risk of staying on my own. So what I ended up doing was I continued plugging away till I got to a point where I had more business than I could handle myself, and then I started hiring other people. And that's really how I started scaling, was expanding my reach, and hiring other people, training on other people. And then my role kind of shifted from being a recruiter who was just sitting and interviewing all day to being more of like a manager who's, I guess a coach in a way, of training other recruiters to work under me. And they do a lot of the recruiting itself. And I'm doing more of the sales, the marketing, the client relations. And that's kind of how my role shifted and how we scaled the business.
Got it. Were you ever kind of doubtful about taking the risk? Like, was it ever kind of psychologically difficult to sort of step into this space where there's a lot of uncertainty and you don't know if it's going to work out? You just turned down clearly a great opportunity.
So I mean, I didn't have that in the beginning, because once I saw that I could do it once, I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like, I had some uncertainty, like, can I really do this? I don't know. But then the first time I had a real like mental test was the first dip. Like, recruiting has like highs and lows, right? You can go a month and make a ton of placements, and you can go a month where you make only a couple, right? So when I hit my first month where I didn't do so great, I was like, oh shoot, maybe I just kind of rode a wave and now it's like not gonna work. Or maybe I don't actually know what I'm doing and I just got lucky. Or what if this trend continues? How many low months can I take before being like, hey, I gotta pull the plug on this, right? That's when I had my first kind of scare. But I was also, like I said, still young, finishing up college. I didn't have a ton to lose. And I was like, let me just plug through and see how long this will last and see how long I can push it to see like if I can survive this low point. And overall recruiting, so I've seen kind of levels out. So there'll be months where you're doing really well, and then there'll be months where you're doing not so great, but it kind of levels out in the middle overall. So as long as what I do with my recruiters is I'll tell them, hey, what's your goal of how much you want to make, right? So then they have their percentages, their commissions, and I say, great, in order to make X amount of commissions, you need to make X amount of placements a year. And break that down further. How many interviews do you need to do to get those many placements?
So you really reverse engineer.
Exactly. Then how many calls
Yeah.
you got to make? Then how many like cold messages do you got to make? And then you pretty much outline goals, daily, weekly goals that you have to hit. And in the long run, it averages out. So even if you do really well one month or really poor another month, it'll probably hit close to your goal. Maybe a little bit above, a little bit below.
Yeah.
So that's
want
kind
that
of
water, by the way.
Oh yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to tell you.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much the answer to that.
Got it. Yeah. So, what is the most challenging aspect of recruiting?
That's a good question. I think the most challenging aspect with recruiting, well, there's a couple things that are challenging. I think for me, how my business is structured, it's probably getting good clients that have good communication and follow through when they're not the one in need. What I mean by that is the way that my structure is set up is we don't charge a retainer up front. We only get paid after we do our role, and then a certain period of time elapses that the person's been working there to kind of like ensure that things are going smoothly. And then at that point, we then need to get paid, right? But at that point, the company is set, right? They have what they need.
Oh, I see. Huh.
So in the beginning,
Yeah.
they're super motivated. They're like, yeah, we need a recruiter. We need this job filled ASAP. Like whatever
we'll
the
pay you
contract
whatever
says.
the hell, yeah.
Whatever the contract says, we're good.
Yeah.
Sign it, right? And then once they have that thing,
Yeah.
and it's time to pay up, now
They've forgotten that you just
yeah,
provided them
they're
the
like,
service.
oh well, I have
Yeah.
what I have, so I don't need to rush now. Like I'm good. You know what I'm saying? So
I got you back type thing.
yeah, they're like, oh, yeah. But hey, like, hello, this is what we did our side of the, you know. So a lot of times, and I say this is like really frustrating for me sometimes, that for a lot of other people, the day they're supposed to get paid is like their favorite day. It's like this is that they circle it on the calendar. Like this is I'm getting paid that day. For me, it's my least favorite day because it's a lot of times, especially when we're working with new companies, you don't know how they respond to these things, and sometimes it could be a real fight. To get paid, especially on time. Like we've sued multiple companies who just decided not to pay, right? And we don't work with them anymore, obviously. But the companies who pay on time, the companies who pay what they're supposed to pay, we prioritize. Because there's like an 80-20 rule, or like 20% of your clients will produce 80% of your revenue. So that's really frustrating sometimes. That's how the model's kind of set up. I've thought about switching to having a retainer. There are pros and cons to it. But as of right now, we don't. But having a company with good communication is also key, I think. Meaning, if we send a candidate and they don't get back to us for like a couple days, a lot of times the candidate loses interest. There's a big momentum kind of track when it comes to hiring. Both parties need to be into it and involved. And if there's kind of like uncertainty, either party can say, I'm not sure if this person really wants to be here, and they get kind of cold feet or get turned off. So having good communication and continuing that momentum, that flow, is sometimes challenging, but also the biggest key towards like getting there.
Yeah, one question that I had is decisiveness ever a challenge? And let me explain what exactly I mean by that. So I'm the type of person where my interests are like constantly changing. Like for a while I was just, I loved basketball and that was the only thing I thought about. Of course,
I've been there.
Hopefully I've matured since that phase.
Yeah.
But obviously I still love basketball, but I've sort of developed some new interests. But now it's like I can't stick to one thing. Like I can't finish a book. Like I'm listening to one thing. Now I'm talking to someone about something. Like my mind is all over the place now in terms of like interests and things that I'm curious about. So one thing that I'm worried about as I kind of look ahead in terms of being someone that needs to sort of at some point I'm probably going to have to lock it down and say this is the job that I'm going to take. I could see that being a little challenging for me just because I have so many like kind of different interests and I like to dabble in a whole bunch of different things. Having worked with a lot of people who you're lining them up, you're putting them in a position where they now have a job. Is it ever a challenge for someone to kind of commit to a position, even if, because there's no perfect job. There's always going to be some sort of problem with however minute, there's always going to be something that the person isn't super enthused about in that particular position. So, is kind of getting someone to commit to the job a challenge, and like, how do you work through that?
Right. So it's a good question. There's layers to the question. So first off, there's always uncertainty to an extent with certain people, obviously more than others. I'll say this. I see this in companies, and at first they don't get what I'm saying, but then they totally understand what I'm saying. Somebody who says they're good at everything is good at nothing, right? Meaning, if I come in and I'm a job seeker and I come to a company and I say, I can do all these things, right? I'll do whatever you need me to do. That's not appealing for a company who's looking to fill a position because they have a problem, right? This is my problem. I need X.
So
right?
they need specificity.
Right. I need a specialist in this thing to solve my problem. Like if they need a bookkeeper who specializes in QuickBooks, right? Because a lot of companies use QuickBooks to do their books, right? If you say, hey, I'm good at a lot of things. I can do a little bit of sales. I can do a bit of, QuickBooks. I could do a little bit of marketing. I could do a bit of this. To them, they hear, this guy doesn't specialize in QuickBooks. He does all these other things. He's not the best at this. Yeah. He's not focused on this. He's focused on all these other things. I need him to be focused on this, right? Because this is the problem I have. They don't need somebody to just come in and do like all these random other things, right? Some companies do want somebody to kind of have their hand in a lot of different things, but most don't. Most say, here's my problem. I need a person to be the solution.
Yeah.
So being super indecisive and being good at all these random things could be good for some, but most of the time being specialist in one thing is really what companies are looking for. So that's one. You're right. There'll always be something that, obviously, when you're working with other people, there might be somebody you clash with. There might be some tasks in your job that are less appealing than others. But you need to have some level of certainty in what you're doing. One thing that companies get nervous about is like a job hopper, right? They call it job hopping. When you're switching jobs every couple months, every year, whatever, that's a concern for companies because they'll say, how do I know that they're going to stay with me, right? How do I know that if I hire this person, he's not going to leave in a couple months from now and then I have to start from scratch all over again? And then I just paid for their salary and training and all these resources, and if they use a recruiter, then a recruiting fee, right? Just for the person to leave in a couple months, right? That's a scary thought as a company, right? If you're asking from the perspective of, hey, how can you gain certainty? So that's why I tell people to try things all the time. Like that's what I did, right? I had no idea what I wanted. I had no idea where to start even, right? I didn't have like a family business to just hop into. I wasn't working anywhere seriously beforehand. Like I worked at camps. Like that's what I did. But I needed to find something that I liked. So I tell people when you have uncertainty and you don't know what you want to do, try as much as you can try. Doesn't matter how random, how crazy. You can Google right now, top 10 side hustles today, right? Just try them because you never know what you'll like. You'll gain some skills along the way. You may make a couple dollars as well. You might even start something and really enjoy it.
Like you make connections along the way.
Right, you make connections. Like I started drop shipping. Failed. I didn't lose a ton of money. I lost a couple $100, but I learned how to make a website.
Yeah.
I learned how to market it. I learned what Google ads are and Facebook ads and all these things and how I can, that's valuable information to know as a business owner, right? So if that would have taken off, then who knows? Maybe I would have never done recruiting. I would have just been a drop shipper, right?
Yeah. Do people make it? This is kind of a random question, but do people take off as drop shippers?
Yeah, it's very hard now. Now it's very oversaturated. But like 4 or 5 years ago, it was crazy. A buddy of mine, actually, his dad started drop shipping, and now it grew. He's drop shipped like towels from China, and now it's a full-blown company. Like he's a major distributor for a lot of different companies, and it just blew up from there. Like a lot of people have that, and it's a skill to know what products to pick and like how to market it effectively and who to market it to. That's a skill that you have to like learn and pick up. But I learned a lot while I was doing that.
Yeah.
So even though it failed, I learned what I liked and what I didn't like, right? So there were a bunch of parts of that process that I hated, and there were parts of it that I really liked. So based off that, I can now take what I liked and what I didn't like and look for a new opportunity that has the things that I like and doesn't have the things that I don't like. And I did that with every job I did, including the YouTube stuff, the drop shipping, the running different errands for businesses, and everything else I did. I was a basketball coach, whatever. Like there are things that I took from that also. And that's kind of how you gain a little bit of a direction of where to go. And eventually, hopefully, you'll kind of narrow it down into what type of roles make the most sense. And you make the best of it. Like you said, there's always going to be things you won't like, but I bet you like money. So, if you make money, then you're good,
Yeah. So one question that I had was, I think a huge, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a huge part of your job is networking. Like you got to talk to people, you got to make connections with people, and I think that's an important skill for anyone in life.
Yeah.
How do you have any advice on sort of how to be a great networker? Like how can you sort of build that skill?
Yeah. First of all, don't be afraid to talk to people. A lot of people get nervous. They're like, oh, what if he doesn't like me? Or like it's scary to talk to people, which I get for some people is it could be scary to just put yourself out there. That's the first thing to overcome, because that's a valuable skill in sales. That's a valuable skill in life, to just be able to like see somebody and just have a conversation and say like, oh, hey, like, what do you do? Like, what do you like do for work? What do you enjoy doing for fun? What are some things we can connect on? Because people want to hook up the people who are close to them, their friends, right? There are plenty of people who I know who are not so qualified for a job, but they're buddies with the CEO or they're buddies with the hiring manager. And they're like, hey, this is my boy. I can trust them. Let me just hire him, even though he's not as qualified. Because trust is valuable and relationships are valuable. So advice I have, put yourself out there. Talk to people. Find common interests. Expound on that. Grow that. Build that. See how you can provide value to other people. A lot of times people are only interested when you've already kind of made the first step towards helping them. Like when I make a call, I'll say, hey, like tell me what you do as a business. So even though I'm just recruiting for you right now, if I know somebody who can be good for like, who not good, but like it can utilize your services, I'm going to refer them to you, right? You're my client. I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to help you out, right? You're helping me. I'm helping you. So instantly they're like, oh, great. This guy's helping me grow my business. Also, he's paying for himself, right? I have to pay a recruiting fee, but he also hooked me up with 3 new clients that paid me more than the recruiting fee. This is all worth it, So that's a big factor, just kind of providing value for other people, trying to help them out. Then you're also top of mind for them. Another thing also is, especially if you're trying to network with people in a potential industry that you're interested in, come at it at a very like mentor-mentee relationship. A lot of people, when they get to a certain level in their career, they don't have the same excitement anymore coming into work, right? They've been doing the same thing for years. They're at the top of the food chain. There's not much that gets them up in the morning. A lot of times when you've hit that point, what really gets you is like giving your information and your knowledge to the next person, the next generation.
It's a great point.
Being like, being that like mentor for somebody. That's really intriguing.
So if you come in, so like, I see where you're going with this. So like, the way I feel like I could apply that would be like, if I get a job, maybe out of college or an internship, come into it with the attitude of I want him or her to mentor me. Yeah. And that'll kind of, make them passionate about it and want to, sort of give back even more.
Yeah. If you come, even if you don't even have a job yet, let's say I want to be, get into marketing, right? Yeah. Go on LinkedIn, find marketing directors in my area or whatever it is, and be like, hey, I'm sure you're swamped. I'm sure you have tons of stuff going on, but I've been following you on LinkedIn for a little bit. I love your content. I see like your experience. I see like the journey you've taken to get to where you are, and that fascinates me, and I want to emulate that. Like where you are is where I dream to be, and you've picked up tons of great information and tricks of the trade and built the right connections, and I just want to know how you did that so I can kind of be like that and learn from you. And a lot of people will hear that and be like, oh wow, like I want to help this guy out. And then what that does for you is you get great information, great knowledge from people who are exactly where you want to be from. They'll pretty much show you the way. Sometimes they'll even hook you up with a job themselves. They'll be like, hey, this guy showed so much initiative. He reached out to me. I'll hook him up with a job here. Like, I like that kind of like spunk, right? And a lot of times also they'll connect you to people who you need to be connected to move forward as well. It only helps, right? And they'll take you under their wing. You grab a cup of coffee, you hop on a Zoom call, whatever it is. It can only help you, right? And it's interesting to hear, especially if you don't know yet where you want to be. I tell people this all the time also when they're trying to figure out what they want to do. Ask people who are already doing that, right? Like we spoke about this in the car, I think, right? I was into psychology for a little bit. My first year in college, I was going to be a psych major. But taking psych classes is not being a psychologist, right? That's like a lot of technical terms, a lot of concepts, a lot of interesting ideas on how people think, which was fascinating. But that doesn't equate to sitting in a chair listening to people's problems and then, giving advice, right? It's similar. Like there are definitely concepts that you need, but it's not the same thing, right? So talking to somebody, I had somebody who I knew who was a relative of mine who was already a psychologist, and I was able to ask him what a day-to-day is like. And I was like, well, that's not what I want, right? That's helpful. That's helpful to know. So in addition to just trying things, talking to people who've already done it so you can get a feel of what that's like, that'll also be super valuable when you're networking.
Got it. What are your tips on how to ace a job interview?
Okay, that's good. There's a lot of things you can do. I'll tell you common mistakes that I hear or see. First of all, the craziest thing I've seen is a guy showed up for an interview drunk. Don't do that. That was crazy.
What?
That was wild. I was really lucky that the company...
Did that happen recently? Because, dude, I was listening to the podcast, one of the podcasts you were on. I think it was the...
with the
Just Get Hired.
Oh, maybe Just Get Hired.
Yeah, and she asked you what the craziest thing you saw was. And you're like, I don't know if there was one craziest thing, but people always show up unprepared.
Yeah. So it happened after the Just Get Hired podcast. I was actually really lucky. The company kind of laughed it off. Like,
I
they
can't
thought it was a crazy
believe that
story.
happened, dude.
Yeah, he showed up, reeked of beer apparently, and like... just was babbling all over the place, and it was wild because he was...
Well, you provided the company with comedy.
Yeah, well, that's not really what my goal was, but at least they got it. It's a positive thing, I guess. But they were actually super chill about it.
Yeah.
I was almost like embarrassed. Like, this is a guy that I'm showing you, like presenting to you, and he's not qualified whatsoever. But it was wild because he was totally
this guy's
put
top
together.
Tier talent.
No, he was so put together in our interview that we did, and his references said glowing things about him. And then all of a sudden he's like schmacked on the interview. It's like not what you wanted to see. So that definitely don't do. I always tell people, dress like professionally. Don't chew gum. Don't come in like drinking a coffee. These are just things that throw off the company and are so unnecessary. Like, you don't have to do those things, so just don't do it, you know? Come with a copy of your resume. It's a little redundant, but people like it. It shows you prepared, shows that you took some effort. Always do research about the company before you go in for the interview. Know what you're interviewing for. Like, I've had people who we tell them everything about the interview, like about the company and about the job and everything. We walk them through the whole thing. They're interested. They're asking questions. And they go in the interview, and it's like they forgot everything we said. And they're like, what position is this again? That looks horrible. That looks horrible.
Wait, so I have a question about that. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that happens because people, didn't do their homework? Or do you think that happens because people are kind of cracking under the pressure?
Could be a little bit of both. I think if you do enough homework, you won't crack under the pressure. In basketball, right? Like we were talking about basketball, right? So
very similar.
Yeah, when you train and ball, right? That gives you the confidence to go out and perform at a high level, right? Like for me personally, I also play basketball a ton. It was like everything I did all day, every day, and my transition from the type of player I was as a freshman in high school to senior year was huge. Obviously, my skill improved, but when I came into to high school, I was not great at all. Like, I was told I was like the worst guy in our grade, and there was a YouTube guy that I watched all day, every day, and I would train, and I would do great.
Do you remember who the guy was, just out of curiosity?
His name was like Coach Rocky with I Love Basketball TV.
I know that guy, yeah.
So I watched a ton of Drew Hanlon, iHeart Basketball TV.
Of course, yeah, Drew Hanlon's great.
I think he's like one of the best, honestly.
Yeah. It's so funny that we were watching the same guy.
That guy was preaching all day, like about confidence and just like see the ball go in and practice. Yeah. Like, you're doing it. Like, you got it. Like, confidence is like the next step. Because like you see it in practice, and once you see yourself succeeding enough times, you're like, great, I can do this in games because I did it 100 times in practice, right? That's where the confidence comes in. So if you practice your interview skills with a recruiter, with a friend, right? Just like, hey, just interview me, ask me questions, whatever, get used to talking, and do research on the company that you know what you're talking about, right? When you get there, you have the confidence. You're like, I've been doing, like, I know what I'm talking about. Like, this isn't new to me, right? Like, I've done the research. I know all about the company. I know what your job is. I know what your job is. I know who's interviewing me. I know what the company does. I know what their mission is. I know the type of people who work here. And, like, I know the job description, like, the back of my hand. You're confident. Like, you know what you're talking about. There are still some nerves that could come about. But don't say to them, like, I don't know what I'm here for. Like, that doesn't look great, right? And don't say, like, we've had this also where like people will apply to a bunch of different places and they won't remember where they applied to, like just throwing their resumes left and right, different things. Know where you're applying to, so when they call you, then at least you don't sound like you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you know who they are, because people will say like, I never get callbacks, like companies never call me, or like recruiters never call me, like I submit my resume and they never call me. So when they do call, you got to know who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Or else then they're like, what? You're not such a serious candidate. You don't even know who you're talking to, right? So just keep track of who's calling. Because like when we call, we're like, hey, my name's Shlomo Meisels from SM Staffing. You got to know that you applied through SM Staffing.
Yeah.
Right? At least that. Right? So that's one way to be prepared, be more confident. Definitely the research is key. Definitely smile is a big one. Like I said, personality match. People want to be with people who they enjoy working with. Mm-hmm. Be friendly. Smile. Ask about them. Ask about the position more elaborate. Elaborate on the company and what their missions are and their drives and passions. You come off more likable. They're more likely to hire you. Also references. Make sure you have good references, but not just good references that like know you well, like articulate references. The amount of times I've gotten references that I call that are like, I know this guy for years, but he can't answer a question in the reference. Like he doesn't know how to articulate how good he is or what he's done.
Interesting.
So there's two levels to it. There's like, he knows me really well, but he's got to be able to tell me, right? He's got to be able to relay that information to me or to a company. Because if he can't do that, then it doesn't help me, right? He could say he's the greatest guy in the world, but if he can't give me an example, then it's like worth nothing.
Yeah.
So those are like the main things that I would say that people should have down.
Got it. Is there a trait, and this can be a skill set, it can be a degree, it can be a personal quality, is there a trait that you think is in short supply? Like, is there something that, you sort of wish you would see more of in potential employees?
Yeah. Hustle. There are a lot of people who have hustle, but not just hustle, like passion for what they're doing. I think a lot of people are motivated by money, which is fair, right? I got to pay my bills. I want to live a nice lifestyle. That's a motivation for working. Fair. Totally fair. But there's not a lot of people anymore who have like company loyalty, self-respect in their work. Like a lot of people will say, I'm coming in, it's a 9 to 5. Who cares if I go above and beyond? I'm getting paid the same amount. Maybe I'll get a bonus, maybe whatever, but I'm getting paid the same amount. So they just come in, they clock in, they clock out, and be done. People who like show real passion and desire to succeed and grow, are, like it's so obvious. They come in, they're like, they know they want to be there. They're asking the right questions. They're focused on the right things. They're like, I'm not saying forget the salary. I'm not saying forget compensation. I'm saying take pride in yourself and your work and who you are. Don't be like, I'm just gonna hop around because whatever. I'm just doing whatever. And really top tier communication skills, like being able to really articulate yourself in an environment. Like there are some jobs where you don't need that. Like a lot of like techie jobs, you come in there, you sit on your computer, you do what you got to do. But a lot of roles require communication between meetings, giving reports to higher ups, whatever it is. Being able to articulate yourself and say, hey, I'm struggling with this issue. Can you help me with this? Right? Or hey, I would like to do this more. Or I need help. Or I'm doing really well with this. I want to do more of this. Being able to articulate that to your team, your manager, is so helpful, right? Like, if you aren't able to say, I need help with something, and you just continue doing it, you might get fired because they're going to say, hey, this guy's not doing what he needs to do. And maybe you know that you're not doing it well and you want to get better, but if you can't express that, then you'll end up getting stuck or getting fired. So those are two things that are pretty
right. Yeah, I remember on the same podcast, Just Get Hired.
Yeah.
You spoke about erring on the side of honesty during. I think the context was in an interview, but it might have also been in the day to day in the office. Talk about that a little bit because how can a potential employee sort of strike a balance between presenting their abilities in the most sort of honest way possible while also displaying confidence and competence? Yeah,
great question. So the main thing that I was kind of talking about then on the Just Get Hired podcast, we're like plugging her so much. I love it. She's getting hella shout outs. Okay. Yeah. The main thing that I was talking about was people want a job, right? Fair. They want the role they're coming, they're applying for it. They want to land the job, right? And it's good to be confident and it's good to kind of like hype yourself up a little bit. It's necessary. But honestly, right? Because what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen if you can't actually deliver on the promises that you're promising? You just get fired, which is just a massive waste of time for everybody. And you won't be happy. right? If you come in and you say, yeah, I like environments that are super social, but you're an introverted, guy who doesn't really want to talk to anybody, you're not going to be happy there, right? You're not going to enjoy working there. You're going to leave, or they're going to fire you, right? Or let's say you say, hey, I have all this experience doing all these things, right? And you come in the first day you get there and you don't know what you're talking about. They're going to see that. They're going to see straight through you, right? Yeah, okay, you can learn some things for sure, but if you're just straight up lying, you just make yourself look silly. And then now you have to explain to the next employer why you only were at the job for 2 weeks or a month, right? Now you look like a job hopper. Now it's hurting you more than helping you, right? And that's not gaining experience that's going to be worthwhile because you didn't actually gain any experience, right? So being honest with who you are, but obviously putting your best foot forward, but being honest, right? And companies respect that also. Like when I present a candidate, there are plenty of times where I'll be like, hey, this candidate is great at all these things, but not great at this one thing. But if you're willing to take a chance on this person, I think you can train him in this thing and he'll be super successful moving forward. They respect the heck out of that because they're like, okay, we know going in exactly what we need to do. We're planning for it. We're going to set in place systems that will help overcome the struggle that he has or this thing that he's missing. And then he's going to thrive, right? But if they didn't know that, now he's starting there and he's starting from scratch and they don't really know what's flying and he doesn't really know what's flying and he's not able to succeed. So being honest can only help you.
Yeah, maybe a good strategy is to articulate your deficiencies in a way that make them seem solvable. You know what I mean? Like, because I'd imagine if I was an employer and someone comes to me and says, here's my deficiency, but it seems like something that I could sort of fix pretty easily. I would be like, I don't really care that this person is weak in this regard because, I can just teach them how to do it differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always training in every company you go to. Any job you take on, you have to have some level of training. So when you're open as to what type of training you need, you'll be set up for success moving forward, right? If you're getting the wrong training or not enough training, you're just not going to be successful, right? So yeah, it helps everybody involved, right? When companies make a job description, a lot of times they make like their perfect person. And a lot of times that person doesn't exist. They're not going to get that person many times, right? Because this is their ideal, right? Sometimes they just throw things in there because why the heck not, right? So even if you don't have all the experience, but you have most of it, then a lot of times companies see that and they're like, great, doesn't have all experience. I like the guy. He has enough experience. We'll train him on the things that he doesn't have, right? That's totally fair and occurs every day. Those type of people get hired all the time. So it's not something to worry about, saying I don't have everything. I need to lie and say I have everything. No, just be honest. It's expected.
So I think one thing that people my age might be struggling with is pursuing a job that they think they might be good at versus a job that they're extremely passionate about. Because, obviously in a perfect world, you find the thing that you could easily be in the top 1% at, and it's your true calling. Yeah. But I think the reality is for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to find that sort of, I guess where the Venn diagrams overlap, so to speak.
The balance,
in that. Yeah. So, talk about that. What's your advice to me as someone, as a 19-year-old who, I want to do something that I'm passionate about, but being competent and obviously making money is very important to me.
Right.
So yeah, what's your advice to me in that respect?
Good question. So, like I said, there's two motivations why anybody works. One is to make money. One is also to make money while being happy. Or like enjoy doing it, not while being happy. Well, enjoy that work. Yeah. That's two different things, right? Some people, they just enjoy having money. And so for that type of person, okay, they do what they need to do so they can make a lot of money, and then they enjoy spending that money. That's what they enjoy, right? They enjoy going on vacations. They enjoy going out, whatever it is. That's what they enjoy. Some people want to enjoy every second of their job. Those are two separate things, right? So first step is understanding what are my motivations for working to begin with. Do I want to really love what I do, or do I want to just make money, right? Because if I just want to make money, then let me just do what I'm good at, that I'll make a lot of money doing, and then I can use that to do more things that I enjoy doing, right? Sometimes people just don't enjoy working at all, right? Like, it doesn't matter what it is. I don't like working. Like, working's
I've met people like that who, they just want to, they think they're going to hate every job, so they might as well just get the one that pays the most.
Exactly. Like, why not? Because that's also a thing, right? Some people want to have hobbies and things that they enjoy. Like, let's say this podcast, for example, right? Yeah. You might not be making a ton of money on the podcast, but you enjoy doing the podcast. So making more money gives you the opportunity to be able to also have a podcast. Yeah. Right? So you don't have to enjoy every second of your job as long as your job sets you up for enjoying
Right.
what you want to do. And when you have that mindset, you're going to enjoy the job because it's just part of doing what you really like.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, okay, I go to the gym because I want to get jacked and I want to be massive, and I enjoy being able to take my shirt off at the beach and having all the ladies check me out. You know what I'm saying? But I don't love working out every day.
Yeah.
But guess what? Like, you end up loving working out so you can see the results. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes it's not about, you have to just change the mindset of what am I enjoying, right?
Yeah.
If you really want to enjoy the job itself, then you got to find something you really enjoy doing. But that's the priority that you decide to put on yourself or that you have, right? So once you can figure that out, it gets real easy narrowing out what I want to do, because it's okay, great. Is the enjoyment out of getting the finances, or is the enjoyment the work itself? If it's the finances, I'm going to do what I'm best at. That pays me the most. If it's the actual thing itself, then I'm going to just do whatever makes me the most money. And also, what you enjoy can also change throughout your life. Like I said, when I started my recruiting agency, I was doing a lot of recruiting, which I liked. But then I took more of a managerial coaching role, which I actually like more, right? Like, I enjoy the sales and the client relations just as much, if not more, than the recruiting itself. So my job's completely shifted, right? And being an entrepreneur, I don't know how to pronounce it exactly. People get like tripped out. Like,
Entrepreneur?
yeah. Is it entrepreneur or entrepreneur? I don't know.
I think it's entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur.
think.
Yeah.
It's a good question, actually.
People have said to me like, oh, it sounds weird when you say it. I say entrepreneur. I don't know if that's right or
Entrepreneur.
not. I don't know.
I think it's entrepreneur, but maybe I've just been saying it wrong this entire time.
No, I don't know either. I don't know. I'm saying it. I hope people know what I'm saying. Whatever. Like, as somebody who is in that position, I can hire people to do the things that I don't want to do, right? So while you gain experience in some things, you might say, great, I'll do this thing that I don't necessarily enjoy right now, so I can gain experience to do something that I do enjoy. There's a guy that I'm coaching him, career coaching.
Yeah.
He's starting a marketing agency. And there are some parts of it that he really loves, and there are some parts that he doesn't love. So I told him, get a job where you can learn everything, right? Then once you have the tools to teach somebody else, you can teach them the things that you don't want to do, and then you hire that person to do those things that you don't want to do. That way you can focus on the parts of the job that you do want to do. So if your mindset is, I'm taking this job so I can then do what I want to do later, which I really will enjoy and make money, then your mindset's like, great, this is all just part of the process.
Right, yeah.
And your goal should always be, I'm doing what I'm doing now is supposed to set me up for whatever my end goal is. If the job you're doing now doesn't get you towards that goal, you're wasting your time.
So using an end goal as the purpose that fuels enjoyment of the job and of the process.
Yeah. Like, Kobe grinded every day so he can win a ship. Once he won the ship, he felt great about all the hours he was training.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, like, he's a crazy example because he probably enjoyed every second of the training.
Yeah, he enjoyed it when he was up at 3 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying he enjoys the championship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So as long as you're on the track towards getting that championship, you reap
feel
enjoyment.
meaningful.
Right. It's like I'm getting towards my goal.
Is college a scam?
Okay. So you've already heard a little bit of my take on this. I know it's a hot take. I don't know if it's even so much of a hot take.
I had to
anymore.
put you on the spot with this
That's
one.
okay. I'll answer. It's all good.
I need it for the intro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. A little.
The clickbait.
Right. The clickbait. I can be clickbait. That's all good. I think I'll be honest with you. And people will rip on me, and I've made posts about this on LinkedIn. And there are people who agree and people who disagree, and that's okay. That's what opinions are for. I think for a lot of things, a lot of professions, college is a scam. I'm a big believer in it. I think there are certain professions that require college education, doctor, lawyer, whatever. There's certain professions that you need to. I want my doctor to have a college education. I want him to know the difference between my leg and my arm. I want him to know. Okay, but anything mostly in business, like marketing, sales, management, whatever. These are things that like you need experience. I see whenever I'm dealing with like roles that I'm working on, right? The most important thing that everybody cares about, what experience does he have? Did he do an internship? Did he work somewhere, or he or she, whatever? Like where did they gain some sort of experience? Because college, like I said, with like the psych stuff, it doesn't teach you how to be a psychologist doing intro psych. It's the basics. It's great, but it doesn't teach you how to sit there and really understand a person, right? You got to try it out. That's why when you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, you also have to do hours working at a clinic, right? You have to see what it's like. You have to get real life practice. And that's exactly what a lot of the business roles are as well, right? Every company you go to requires a certain level of training. And also 2 years removed from college, nobody cares what college you went to anymore. 2 years removed from college, again, depending on the profession, not every profession, but depending on the profession, a lot of things in business especially, they don't care anymore. They care about where you worked last, what experience you have, who your reference is, what you know, what specific systems you know. They don't care which college you went to, what your degree was in. And almost never have I had a company say to me, I want somebody who went to this college. Like, never. There are companies who are like, I want an Ivy League person. But those are specific industries and specific jobs. And if that's what you want to do, go to college, please, right? But if you don't know at all what you want to do and you're trying to gain experience and knowledge as to what you want, the value in trying things and doing things and gaining real experience, I think, far surpasses a fancy degree, for sure. I would rather somebody, and I think most companies would rather somebody who would go to a faster, quicker college that's probably less expensive also, but a quicker finish and just to get the degree and more experience than somebody who spent 4 years at a college not gaining any experience and then starting from scratch, right? Because like you said, like, I'm starting from scratch. Where do I go? Where do I start, right? Somebody who's been working already has something to base off of. They have an experience to base off of. They know where they're going and they can leverage it and say, hey, I've been doing XYZ experience. That's what you need. Remember, you're solving a problem, right? A person who's straight out of college who's never done anything isn't solving a problem. They're a potential problem solver, right? You got to train that person. And all college has done has told me as a company, okay, this person can follow through, can show up on time, get work done in a timely fashion.
And you could probably display those same
qualities. Which you can do those same qualities if you work for a job somewhere else.
So just to clarify, this is in the professional context, right? Like, you're speaking, from the perspective of like finding a job, college might be a scam, but would you'd agree that maybe in the context of like understanding the world and kind of knowing a lot about different subjects regarding like how the world works, college could be a good investment in that respect.
Yes,
but you're speaking, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing you say is that in the from the perspective of finding a job, then it could be a scam for a lot of people, but you'd agree that in other respects, college could be valuable.
Yeah, here are the good parts of college. Yeah. Ready? Networking. Big. People get a lot of connections with college. Yeah. For sure. 100%. I hear all the time people join like a frat and then they get hooked up with jobs through the frat, or they just meet people in their classes and their respective majors and they gain connections and they get jobs through there. Totally valuable. Massively valuable. That's worth it. Yeah. Right? To an extent, that's a huge value. If you want a social life, college experience, also go ahead, do that. Yeah. If that's what you want. Those are definitely valuable. Yeah. Those are things you could get in other places, but definitely valuable. Yeah. Now, the question you have to ask yourself...
I also think, though, that like learning about things you're interested in.
Yes. Learning like general information is also good. Yeah. It's also good. Learning what you want.
And that's another thing where you probably could find it elsewhere, too. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I owe YouTube so much tuition. Like the amount of
facts, that's a fact.
YouTube, I owe them all my tuition because at the end of the day, the amount of classes that I took that I'm sitting there listening to a teacher not understanding a word they're saying, and then I just go back and watch a YouTube video and I learn the whole thing in a 10-minute video. The class took 45 minutes. The amount of times that has happened is insane. That's like my entire college is through YouTube. Like all those things you can learn from places. If you really want to know, you can, right? The question I always ask myself is, okay, how much is that college experience worth realistically? Because if you think about it, I'm spending, let's just for argument's sake, right? Spending like $25,000 a year on college. Let's just say, right? It depends on your situation, financial aid, full whatever ride, whatever it is, scholarships. Let's say $25,000 a year. I'm spending 4 years. That's $100,000, right? Then you also have to factor in the potential money that I could have made had I been working somewhere, right? Even making minimum wage. Right? Or making like an entry-level salary of like $50,000 a year. Assuming you never grow in those 4 years, you're making $50,000 a year, then now you're out $300,000. Yeah. Right? On a job with no experience, that's you're out right now. Mm-hmm. So like you ask yourself, is the connections that I'm making right now that I could have been making in other places if I assert myself, and the knowledge that I gained that I could have gotten from other places like YouTube or just talking to people in general, is that worth $300,000? Right, that's assuming
it might not be for a lot of people. It probably isn't for a lot of people. I do think though that not everyone views college and this could just be me like in kind of a privileged position where like I'm lucky that, you know, I have the finances to go.
Right.
It's not going to ruin my family. But I think some people don't really view college as a financial investment. Like I think some people just sort of view it, and I think a lot of people do. A lot of people do view it as like, you got to go here so you can learn the skills that will pay back the money we invested.
Right.
I think there are some people who view college as like, I want you to, like, you know, from the perspective of a parent, like I want my kid to be in intellectual circles. I want him to, you know, make lifelong friendships. I want him to, you know, him or her to explore, you know, topics that interest them. But yeah, I do agree with you that there are some sort of systematic problems.
Yeah, the question you have to ask yourself is, why am I going to college? If the answer is to get a job, college might not be for you.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because like, then the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, if I'm going to college to get a job and the goal is, the priority is to get a good job, then what do I actually have to do to get that good job? Is college the answer? Because if so, then great, go to college, right? Like I said, there are some things that you need to go to college for if you want to get a good job in that specific thing. Yeah, you got to go. But if there's other things that will set me up better to get that job, so why would I go to college if the end goal is to go to is to get a good job, right? Why would I not do the thing that is most beneficial?
Yeah.
So if the goal is, I want to have a social life and have general knowledge, worldly information, and meet people and learn different topics that are interesting to me, and this is the best place to do it, do that. That's your priority. That's your goal. If your goal is make money, getting a good job, as a salesperson.
Yeah, which it is probably for that. I mean, I don't know the statistics on this, but I'd imagine that for a lot of people, probably the majority of people who go to college, that's the goal, is get a job.
Yeah.
You know, get a degree.
Right. And if that's the case, then
you might want to consider.
Right. Also, college doesn't hit all the jobs. Like there are like trade schools like that teach you how to be a plumber or whatever, and these guys make crazy money. Like plumbers make a lot of money. And I think
that the graduation rate in trade school is ridiculous, like way higher than college.
Yeah, and it's shorter. Yeah, it's less expensive. And there, if you want to do those things, but like you'll never take a plumbing course in college. I don't even know if they offer it, but like there are people making way over six figures being plumbers, like owning a plumbing company. I have friends who do it. It's crazy. But they only went to trade school because they like couldn't hack college. But now they're making way more than the guys that I know who went to college. It's crazy. So then you ask yourself, whoa, the plumber's making more than me. Now they feel like hurt. Like their pride gets hurt. But it's like, because the goal for him was make money, and college wasn't doing it for him.
Yeah.
So, I guess the story, do what's best for you, but understand your priorities and what your goals are, and then make your decision. Don't just go to college because it's the thing to do.
Yeah, no, I think the difference between our perspective, not that I'm disagreeing with you, but like just the difference between our perspective is that I just don't really view my, you know, personally, I don't really view my college experience as like something that's primarily there to get me a job. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's a variety of other things that I'm getting out of it that, you know, maybe I could have gotten those elsewhere, but I just personally feel like the academic, you know, the institution is the best place for me to get those things.
100%.
That's just personally. But yeah, I think you raise a very good point in the context of finding a job, if that is your primary goal. I mean, maybe it, you know, if that's your goal, you could, you know, consider other means of achieving that.
Yeah, like for me, it was about making money. So I was in college, started a business already, making money, right? I was like, what am I doing here? So I dropped out for a while. I ended up going back to finish because my parents were like, hey, we spent a lot of money on this. Like, just get the piece of paper. Like, be done with it already, you know? So I quickly wrapped it up, you know? But for me, it was like, hey, I'm already making money. Like, I went to college so I could get a good job and make money. But like, I'm already doing that. So what do I got to stick this out for, you know? Yeah. Like, if it were up to me, I think it's cooler to say I'm a dropout, you know?
And I think there's something to be said for pleasing your parents.
Of course. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Especially if they're going to provide you capital later
exactly.
on.
Yeah.
Nah.
So you gotta,
obviously there are other reasons, but it's a lot to consider. But,
like taken out of context, probably for like the clickbait, it's going to sound whatever. But do what's best for you. I'm not saying everybody should drop out of college. I'm not saying like, you know, college is bad for everybody. I just think it's something to think about. Like it's not a given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. Nice. My bad, dude. My
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm getting so interested in the conversation that I'm forgetting to like think of other things to ask. Here's a good thing. So one thing that we spoke about this in the car, but I think it'd be a cool thing to delve into a little bit deeper. One thing that I've spoken with a lot of my friends about and something that I've thought a lot about, is how much does what I major in matter for my career? Like, do I need to be worried that if I pursue my passion in college and, maybe it's not like you were talking about psychology, even though you didn't want to be I resonate with that perspective a little bit. Like right now I know I find like the mind and the brain fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if that's what I'm going to do professionally. Like, will it hurt me to just pursue something that I'm interested in college and then maybe go a different direction after college?
I think it matters very little. Unless you're going for very specific things. But even then, right? Like I think I mentioned you this in the car. Like a buddy of mine, right? He's going to med school, right? In undergrad, he majored in history, right? Why do you do that? First of all, he's interested in history. That's A. And B, it's something different, right? Everybody who's applying to med school, most of them majored in bio, majored in chem, majored in whatever science, right? Because that's what they have to take anyways. You might as well, right? But he stood out because he did all those classes, the bios, the chems, and everything, while also majoring in history. That guy's he put in work.
Yeah.
Like he did a lot. He did way more than he needed to, right? So sometimes it could be a positive. Some majors are just joke majors, and everybody knows it. So don't even bother. Like if you major in it, it's like, okay, great. This guy just majored in whatever. I'm not gonna like start calling people out and saying all the majors. Maybe off the air I will, but like there are some, especially majors that.
Damn,
are like,
dude, you're leaving us hanging.
Okay,
no, I'm joking.
Any major that you create is probably
really, yeah. I've
you know
heard
what I'm saying.
This before.
Like I've heard people who are like, yeah, and they think
I created my own major.
Yeah, they're like, I'm so out of the box, and I'm so like whatever, and I'm like, you just created something that doesn't exist. Like, nobody cares. Like nobody's
really.
Like,
so employers.
No one's like, oh yeah, the management of this, of that, specifically in this, because then like everyone's like, what? What even is that? Like, what classes did you take to get this major? Like, what are your credits? Those things are like weird. Like I'm not gonna like whatever, but like I know specific people that I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. But some majors are like considered easy majors. Happens to be psych is one of them. They're considered like easy majors. Marketing management, easy majors. But it's not like a bad thing to me. I don't think it matters so much. I think it just matters that you graduated. Specific roles, specific jobs require certain things. For most like legal type things, poli-sci is pretty common. For most accounting roles, majoring in accounting obviously, or math is a big one. So like it matters to a point, but it's not a make or break. I've never heard of anybody who was like, we're only hiring people who majored in this. I don't think I've ever heard that. At least not in the companies I've worked with.
Got it. What are some things that employers get wrong when evaluating potential employees?
Okay, that's a great question, actually. What do they get wrong? Some things are... Sometimes they focus too much on what the person has done and not what they could do. So a lot of times potential is a huge factor, right? And a lot of times people get hung up on, like, but they didn't do this one thing already. Yeah, but they did all the other things and really well. And that thing's really easy to learn. So why do you care so much? Like, this person could be really good. Like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime personality fit. Like, this person thinks the same way you think. Like, has the same drive that you require. Like, you were that person. You wouldn't take a chance on yourself? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes people really, like, overlook the potential. Or, like, another thing is that I see is sometimes companies, they don't have an opening this second, so they'll let a great candidate walk. I have a client right now, and we sent them a candidate who has literally done their entire business model already to a T. Could easily come in and be an executive level person, right? And they sometimes hire executive level roles. Like, it comes and goes, whatever. But this moment, they don't have that role open. So they're letting the candidate just go when they're in a month or two from now going to need that person. And they know they're going to need the person in a month or two.
Interesting.
But they won't like be like, oh, this person's like. Sometimes it's important to create a role.
Yeah.
And I've seen really good recruiters do this also, and companies who are smart do this, where they don't have an immediate role open right now, but they see a person who's so knowledgeable in the space and so like qualified in terms of who they are and what they can provide for a company. They create a role for this person. A smart company will see that as a potential situation. They're like, oh, I could make a position for this person because I want this person a part of my team. Because a good candidate, a top tier candidate for something specialty like that, will be gone off the market like that, right? So taking advantage when something good comes along, that's one thing. Also, setting clear expectations when a person starts a job, especially new companies, fresh companies. They come in and like we'll place somebody with them, and in a month they'll come to me and they'll say like, hey, they didn't do this. And you know, sometimes when they send me things, it's via email and not call or text or whatever. And I'll say to them like, did you let them know that you want it to be done a specific way? No. So what, they were supposed to read your mind and then know exactly like, why didn't you tell them their expectations going into it, right? Tell them what you want from them and they'll do it. But don't expect people to read your mind. They'll never know. They'll never be able to hit those expectations if you don't tell them what you want, right? And that goes the same for when you make expectations. Don't start throwing in extra things that weren't in the job description, because all that'll do is confuse your employee and might even like piss them off. Like, none of this was in my job description. I don't even know how to do this stuff. Now you're throwing all this extra work on me and I'm not getting paid more to do all these extra things. But now you're telling me to do all these other things. I get being flexible, and that's okay to a point. But if you're having me do a whole other job, right, this is great. Like, they won't stay because they're going to be like, this is not what I signed up for. And which leads me to my other one, which is sometimes companies combine two roles because they don't want to pay. They try to cut corners, and they try to say, I need this and I need this, so let's just make it one role and have them do everything. Right?
Recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you want specialists in both of those things, so it's done right. Not we're gonna have a guy who's gonna try to just like figure it out and do both things, and that guy doesn't. You're never gonna find a person who has experience in all the things in one, and if they do, they're probably not gonna be interested in that role, because that role is not like, you're part of a company that's trying to cut corners. Nobody wants to work for a company who's trying to cut corners. So those are the main things I'd say.
I had a question about your first one, which is, I think it was your first one, which is, look at what someone could do rather than what they have done. How do you go about evaluating potential?
So a lot of that is through the interview, and it requires a level of like
Instinct,
being a good judge of character, and being good at reading others, you know, and hearing from references and asking the right questions. Everything's about, at the end of the day, asking the right questions, which is a huge value to having a recruiter who knows how to do those things. For example, if I was to call a reference, right? If I want to know if a person has potential to grasp a new concept and in a specific thing, I'm going to ask that reference, hey, he started working for you and didn't know XYZ things. How did he get to the point where he started to know those things? How long did it take him? What steps did he take? How did you train him? What was that like? Tell me about that, right? So now they're going to tell you their experience training you and how you responded to specific, prompts or instructions, and what things you connected to, and what things, did you go out of your way to try to learn off hours, or were you constantly asking the right questions, or were you just kind of being like waiting to be told what to do, right? Somebody who's seeking out to do well at their role has potential, because they'll do that at every role. Someone who's just kind of sitting back and you tell me what to do and then I'll do it, right? And I'm not gonna I'm just here so I don't get fined, that person probably has less potential, right? It's about your drive. It's about your self-respect. It's about your, am I trying to be an asset to this company, right? What is my goals, right? If you ask somebody, what's your vision for 5 years from now? And they're like, I don't know, man. I'm just trying to feed my family and, nothing wrong with that. But just kind of just do my thing, whatever.
Yeah.
They're not driven to do more. If someone says, in 5 years from now, I want to be the top of this. I want to have people below me. I want to be instructing this. That's a guy who has a plan. That's a guy who has a vision. He's going to take steps to get there, hopefully, right?
Yeah. So asking the right questions, looking for someone who's motivated and has goals, and utilizing the references to kind of figure out what this person's habits are and how this person behaves.
Yeah. And hear how they talk about their previous work, right? Like if I'm talking about my previous work and I'm like, yeah, this was annoying, it was tough, whatever. If I'm like, dude, it was a challenge and I solved that challenge, and like the dopamine rush I got when I got it finally was like, I live for that. Like I want that. Like I want to have more challenges, and I want to keep succeeding, and I love the grind, and I loved learning new things, and I loved helping others, and teaching the next round of employees. Like that's a great sign. That's a sign of a leader. That's a sign of someone who can take that next step and be in a managerial role and be in a C-suite role and understand the industry to a point where they're able to do more, right? Almost always the next step is overseeing other people, almost always. So when you express love and ability to do that and drive to do that, then you're pretty much showing that that's where I want to be, and I'm going to do what it takes to get there. But yeah, those are the main things, but it's a feel thing. Sometimes you get it wrong, but there's no 100% way to tell the future. But those are definitely, of course, things you can do.
Yeah. How do you deal with the pressure of being responsible for finding people jobs and employees?
You got to get a little okay with just not being able to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like I have thousands of people in my database and not thousands of job opportunities. So by definition, I can't help everyone, right? And some people, unfortunately, just don't meet the qualifications to the jobs that I have, right? You have to just be okay with that. You get to a point where you're like, okay, I want to help everybody, and I'm going to help them as best as I can. And I'm going to help them with their resume. I'm going to help them with their interview skills. And I can only do so much. At the end of the day, they have to do the job. They have to go and take the interview. I can't do that for them.
And I could see that being, sorry to cut you off, but I could see that being like a very generalizable, whatever, like a rule that you can apply to a variety of different things in life that are, pressure filled, is accept that you're going to be failing sometimes.
Right. Not just that. Like I only worry about things that I can control. Right. If I can't control it, what do I worry about? I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I just freak out for no reason. Like, no, I can't do anything. Right? So I can set them up for success the best I can. I can direct them in the right direction. Maybe I can point them towards another recruiter or another way to source jobs, whatever it is. But at that point, that's the best I can do, right? And after that, I can't help everybody. I wish I could, but I can't, right? And also, people who are job seekers, they're not my clients. They don't pay me a thing, right? So I only have allegiance to them to a point, right? At the end of the day, I have to take care of my clients first because they're the people who pay my bills, right? So I help, but to a point. And it's tough that you're not able to help everybody, but you get used to it after a while. You're like, okay. And it's something I have to actually train out of some of my recruiters that it's something I've had to really focus on with them because they're just trying to fit squares in a circle hole, They're like, but they're such a nice guy. I want to help them get the role. But I'm like, yeah, but he's not a fit. He doesn't fit for this job. And that would reflect poorly on us if we send somebody who's not qualified to this role, right? Sometimes people are just too nice and they want to help everybody, but you have to have a certain level of rigidness where you're like, okay, I want to help you, but I just don't have something for you right now.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to actually, before we get into kind of the last round of questions,
sure.
I wanted to ask, so I remember we were talking about your experience with cold calling, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit just because, as I was telling you, I've, done some cold calling. I think it's just kind of an awesome thing to do.
Yeah.
The adrenaline rush, being a good salesman, super interesting skill to learn about. Talk about your experiences cold calling and, what do you think goes into making a great cold call?
Okay. As a salesperson and an entrepreneur and a lot of roles, cold calling is an essential skill, right? And I honestly think cold calling is an essential skill for humans in general, right? Even if you're not even if you're a coder sitting in the back office in a cubicle and never talk to people, being able to articulate yourself and understand people's needs and how to provide them with a solution, I think is just an overall good skill to have as a person.
Yeah.
Right? To me, the most important sales skills to have is understanding your product flawlessly, Like, I know the ins and outs of everything that I can provide for you, right? That's step one. At that point, I want to target people who have a problem that my product is a solution for. And I want to understand the needs first of my potential client before I start pitching. So if I come in like, here's my product and here's my price and here's my this, a company's like, all right, you're one of a million people who are going to message me and wasting my time, and they hear the price, they get scared off probably, right? All top salesmen will tell you the last thing you talk about is price.
Yeah.
Right? You want to first get them to see the value in what you provide.
Keep going.
First.
Yeah.
Right? And then once you see the value and see that it's priceless because of what it's solving, right? Then price becomes easy, right? So for example, right? An example of this. I'll call a company and say, hey, I see you're looking to hire an accountant, right? And here's my fee, right? I won't say my fee first, but I know my fee, right? Before I get to that, I'm going to say, how much is it costing you to have this position open? And how long has this position been open for, right? So if they tell me it's XYZ amount of money and it's been open for XYZ amount of time, that's costing more than what my fee is going to be. So I'm like, hey, the longer you keep this position open for, clearly what you're doing isn't working. You've had this position open for 4 months, 5 months, and haven't gotten any good candidates, right? You're not looking in the right places, and the processes you're taking are not doing it for you. And the longer you have this position open for, the more money it's costing you, right? And even if it's not costing a direct amount of money, if you're overcompensating by doing that task, you're then not focusing on what you do best, which is grow your company and make money and do like what you enjoy doing, which is probably what makes the most. So you're taking your time away of making real money doing that task that you shouldn't be focusing on. So you could be making and saving so much money if you had this position filled. Mm-hmm. Now, when I tell you my fee, that fee is nothing compared to how much I'm saving you.
Yeah.
But if I say my fee first, that's a lot of money, right? Because they don't understand the value yet. So being able to identify a problem of a potential client, understand their needs and how to solve them, and then being able to articulate, here's how I can solve them in an efficient way. Now they're way more likely to move forward. And one thing we talked about also was being able to just accept rejection. You're going to get shut down. Even if you have a perfect product, someone's going to shut you down. Being able to just take it on the chin and be like, all right, it's not a reflection of who I am as a person. They might be a jerk. It is what it is. I can't sell to every single person. Having a 100% success rate is impossible. And so being able to just take that and plug on to the next one also makes it feel so much better when you finally get one. Those are some pretty big keys, I'd say.
Got it. So having a flawless understanding of the product, being able to ask the right questions, being able to understand the situation of the person that you're cold calling and trying to sell to, and then having a well-articulated explanation of how you can solve that problem.
Yeah.
And then being able to accept rejection.
Yep.
Awesome. So for these last two questions, I wanted to ask, a little bit more personal, less business oriented.
Sure.
So firstly, we're both Jewish.
Yeah.
You probably a better Jew than me.
No, there's no such thing.
How do you bring sort of your Jewish values into your work?
Good question. Okay. So it happens to be I'm in the Jewish circles a lot to begin with. A lot of my clients are Jewish. So that's one aspect right off the bat. Yeah, like a lot of times there are certain like comfortabilities with certain people and certain things, like understanding the culture, right? A lot of times, like, Jews have off different times throughout the year, right? They have different holidays, they have different things. So like having potential candidates understand, like, hey, in the middle of the year there's going to be 8 days off for Passover, right? For Pesach, right? So they have to understand that. That's something that gets affected, right? That you need to like articulate. Be like, okay, it's a little bit different, but you get more free time, you get more paid time off, so it might be a good thing. But the Jewish values itself, for me at least, have always been honesty first. Not everybody's going to be honest, unfortunately, but I do my best to be honest in business. They say, the Jewish concepts, I think it's the first question they ask you when you like go up to when you die, right, is like, were you honest in business? I'm pretty sure it's the first or the second question. Or were you honest in business? Which like highlights how important that is as a person.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's like one of the first things they ask you, right? So I think it's like the first question is, were you honest in business? And the second was like, did you make time for Torah? I think.
Don't Wait, who's asking these questions?
Like, God.
Yeah. This is after you
like,
die.
This is when you die.
You
go up to like heaven, and the first thing they ask you, like when they're like evaluating you.
Oh,
like,
I did not know. Yeah,
this was, I'm pretty sure. You get up, they evaluate you. They're like, all right. I don't know, heaven, hell, I don't know exactly everything. I've never been there, but like,
some rabbis listening, like, come on, Shlomo.
Yeah, it's like, oh, your Jewish education. My parents, like, I sent them to yeshiva. But you get up there. One of the first things they ask you is like, were you honest in business? To me, that is always been my first thing. I don't lie. I don't like lying in general. I hate lying. I don't lie. It's not something I like doing. I don't do it. In business,
because then you have to. I'm too lazy to lie, dude. Because then I have to remember what I said.
Right, exactly. It's like, it's not worth it. You burn bridges. People don't want to work with you. I want to be somebody people want to work with. So being honest. If I can't help somebody, I tell them point blank. I'm like, hey, you want me to help you fill this role? I can't do it. Like, let me help you out. I'll send you somebody else who can help you out. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you, yeah, let me do it. Like, there are some companies that will be like, I can help you fill with any role, blah, 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 and like, they're just, barking up the wrong tree, wasting everybody's time, blowing smoke up their butt. So that's one thing. Being honest is number one, and just trying to be like understanding. I don't know if these are like Jewish concepts specifically, but being understanding of like different companies' needs, and everybody kind of has their own thing that they're coming from and their own perspectives, and the type of environments that they have are different, and being respectful to that is something that people care a lot about. So those are, I would say, the two main things. I don't know if those are specifically Judaism like focused, but
the great answer regardless.
Appreciate it.
Parallels between basketball and business.
Okay, good question. That's a fun question. So, depends on the sport. Basketball specifically. Basketball, if I have to compare basketball to the business, okay. Your company needs to have, same as a team, company and a team need to have a star player and great role players who understand their role. Every company needs a CEO that knows everything back at their hand, knows what they're talking about, knows what they're doing, like can produce a great product, star player. And then they also need to have role players who can really do their job really well, and it makes everybody look better. Everybody's making everybody else look better. Like the team aspect of it. Like, you got to have your star player. You're not going to have a championship team with only role players. It like almost never happens. You got to have at least one or two stars that know what they're doing and can get the job done when push comes to shove, right? But you also can't just have a couple star players then bums, right? You got to have people who can play 3-and-D, can grab a rebound, box out, set good screens. So you need those type of people in your business also who get the other small things done, so you can really focus on being the star player. Also, like the grind, like any sport, it's in the after hours, especially if you're entrepreneur, however you want to pronounce it. If you're that type of person, the unseen hours, as Drew Hanlon.
Yeah, right? Dude, I was thinking the same thing. That's crazy.
That's what it is. It's all. That's where the real business is built.
Yeah.
Like I don't have hours. Like I don't have 9 to 5. Like there are days that I work till 2 a.m. because like I can and I want to, and I'm like driven like that. So there are days I also start late. I have lazy days sometimes where I start at 10 a.m. Or 11 because I can, or that's just the flexibility that I have. But it's really like the putting in the effort when no one else is paying attention that separates you from any other business or any other company, right? It's watching those YouTube videos to gain more knowledge on your industry and your business and how to market and how to sell. Like I just started making my own graphic design and ads and whatever. I got this app. My buddy recommended to me, and I'm learning how to make it so I don't have to pay some fancy person to make video production for me.
Nice.
Right? And this app is great. I spend like 10-15 minutes, I make an ad, right? Which would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And it's not something that, like, if I was really scaling up and I don't want to waste my time on that, then yeah, I can go outsource that to somebody else. But if you have the drive and you want to do it and you want to learn new skills and kind of like be able to do that, that's unseen hours. It's the practice that goes into it. Same with like the interviews, putting in the training, putting in the hours gives you more confidence that when you get out there, especially with sales pitches, knowing what you're doing, knowing what you're selling, knowing that your confidence in yourself, you can hear confidence over the phone. Like you can hear when somebody's unsure of themselves versus somebody who like knows their stuff. Those are the main parallels. And also, and this one I'll throw in there also, you're going to have bad days. You're going to have days you go 0 for 5, 0 for 10, 0 for 12. You're going to have days where you're just not feeling it. But you got to have short-term memory. Get back out there next day, plug away like it never happened. Those would be the main things.
Got it, man. All right. Awesome episode.